Welcome to Oxygen for Educators. This is Michelle Kinder. I'm one of your hosts. We're going to be looking at the hard truth that students need more, and simultaneously the adults in the building are feeling under-resourced and overextended. Join us as we elevate the voices of people across the country doing this work. We'll be looking at anxieties, overwhelm, burnout, joy, commitment, and everything in between. We're glad you're here. This space is for you. Welcome, everyone. This is Michelle Kinder, and I am one of your hosts of Oxygen for Educators. And I'm with you tonight for a mini episode. And we'll be doing these in between the interview episodes. So just little shots in the arm, hopefully some ideas that you can apply, little sips of oxygen, if you will. And today what I want to focus on is a quote that comes from Nadia Bolzweber. She said, "Show me what is mine to do, then grant me the strength to do it and the humility to rest, knowing it is enough." And I was paying a lot of attention to this quote the last week or so and realized how much relevance it has for educators. The jobs that you do far exceed the hours in the day, and that can be exhausting or even soul-crushing. So this notion of really narrowing into what is yours to do and then seeking the strength to do that, and I really love her framing, then having the humility to rest, knowing it is enough to just do what is ours to do and having that strength to do it. So let's unpack those three components, starting with show me what is mine to do. Now, my experience is that in order to really zero in to what is yours to do, you have to have some sort of practice that quiets all of the external noise and helps you listen to your inner wisdom and the truthiest truth that comes from yourself very often. So that can look a lot of different ways, and it's completely dependent on your comfort level and your values and beliefs and what have you. But one of the fastest routes to zeroing in on what is ours to do is prioritizing some sort of practice, hopefully daily, like a meditation practice, a prayer practice, stillness, even just taking the time a few times a week, a few times a day to tune into your intuition and listen to what feels true for you. So that's the first idea. The second thing is that sometimes, despite our desire to listen deeply to what we feel is true, there's blind spots, there's gaps. And so in order to really zero in to what is mine to do, I have to have the capacity to talk with trusted people that see me sometimes more clearly than I see myself. And I think that's true for all of us. So a practice that helps us listen deeply to ourselves, like meditation, prayer, stillness, intuition, and then extending beyond that by including trusted people who can round out the picture when our blind spots come into play. The third idea I want to zero in on with this notion of show me what is mine to do is this idea of a sphere of influence. And probably most of you have seen the graphic, sort of like what is in our sphere of control, what is in our sphere of influence, and then beyond that, what's happening that's completely out of our control and out of our influence. And really looking to put the most energy we can into our sphere of control or our sphere of influence. Now, for me, that has always felt a little bit complicated because there were big world events or country events or things happening in the world that I had no influence over and certainly no control over. But turning away from them felt like an expression of privilege that didn't feel right to me. So the struggle of being able to figure out what is ours to do without checking out from things going on that are impacting other people and using our voice and power and will to support groups who might be more vulnerable or more at risk of being on the wrong side of injustice has always felt really complex to me. And what I've found is that if I'm zeroing in on something that is out of my sphere of control and out of my sphere of influence, but I care deeply about it, if I can connect a thread to what can I influence and what can I control that is connected to that issue, then I'm able to take action. I'm able to really get into the space of what is mine to do. So an example would be, if there is a political policy that is out of our control and out of our sphere of influence, but it matters to you, then what you can do is find out who does have influence and who does have some control, and share your thoughts, share your resources, spread the word about what that group is doing. Those are some really concrete ways that we can take those big issues that are outside of our sphere of influence and pull that thread so that we still feel like we're in it. We're not turning a blind eye because maybe it doesn't affect us, but we're also not being paralyzed and consumed by something that we don't have any influence or control over. Two more things on this first point. For me, I have found it unbelievably useful in this notion of show me what is mine to do, to use a done for the day list. As educators, you all have endless to-do lists. The things you're working on are not going to even be solved in your lifetime. They're so important. But you can get granular on what you're going to accomplish each day. And when that list is complete, you release and relax and enjoy your evening, afternoon, whatever it is. If we're operating from a to-do list that is never ending, our minds don't shut down, our hearts don't shut away from some of the stressors. We've got to have some capacity for turning it off and turning our attention in another direction and letting our nervous system settle. And for me, a very practical way to do that is I have my master to-do list, and then I have my done for the day list. And when I get done, I'm done, and I don't look back. The last thing I want to share about this first part of Nadia Bolzweber's quote, "Show me what is mine to do," is a poem by Greg Kimura called Cargo. And this is what he says. "You enter life a ship laden with meaning, purpose, and gifts, sent to be delivered to a hungry world. And as much as the world needs your cargo, you need to give it away. Everything depends on this. But the world forgets its needs, and you forget your mission, and the ancestral maps used to guide you have become faded scrawls on the parchment of dead pharaohs. The cargo weighs you heavy the longer it is held, and spoilage becomes a risk. The ship sputters from port to port, and at each you ask, is this the way? But the way cannot be found without knowing the cargo, and the cargo cannot be known without recognizing there is a way, and it is simply this. You have gifts. The world needs your gifts. You must deliver them. The world may not know it is starving, but the hungry know, and they will find you when you discover your cargo and start to give it away. I share that poem because to me it brings into focus the urgency that we do what is ours to do in this world. So with that, we'll move on to the second part of the quote. Remember, the full quote is, "Show me what is mine to do, then grant me the strength to do it, and the humility to rest, knowing it is enough." So now we're on the second part, the strength to do it. Give me the strength to do it. So I want to zero in on a few things that can help us with that. The first is getting much better at gatekeeping who and what gets our attention. In this day and age, there are a lot of forces at play that would love for you to stay tuned, stay in a fear state, try to manage that fear by spending money or othering people, and that keeps us in a pretty agitated nervous system state. So if we're going to control our strength to do it, then we've got to manage what's coming at us in the way of news, toxic relationships, problematic situations, all of those things that can steal our energy and steal our strength. We have to get really good at gatekeeping that stuff in 2024 because no one is going to do it for us. And the stickiness of getting pulled into some of that energy and just system that's designed to capture your attention and keep it is so strong that in the absence of you making an active decision to really control who and what gets your attention, you're going to get swept into a consistent state of fear or rage or othering or, all the things that keep us tuned in. So that's the first idea. Really get aggressive and smart about gatekeeping who and what gets your attention. Now, there's a caution flag to that. We want to do that, but we don't want to use it as an excuse, like an exit ramp for privilege. We've still got to figure out how to stay connected to the issues and the people that we care about while protecting our energy. The last point I want to make about this notion of strength to do it is related to a popular concept in psychology called coping flexibility. And that's basically our ability to adapt our coping strategies depending on the situation and the capacity to release something when it is no longer working and find something else to replace it. This concept gets addressed pretty frequently in the research around stress and resilience and emotional regulation. And what's called for from us with this is the capacity to evaluate a situation and then choose an appropriate strategy. Pay attention to if that strategy is giving you the payoff that you wanted. And if it isn't, adjust. So I have a lot of different rituals that I do throughout the day that help me stay grounded. But sometimes they get stale. And if I keep doing it just because it once worked for me, then I begin to kind of get withered and I feel less that strength to do what is mine to do. But if I feel nimble and I'm like, hey, this isn't working for me anymore, I don't want to do it, I'm going to try something else. And I have the capacity to drop it and shift my attention. That goes a long way in terms of my capacity to have that strength to do what is mine to do. It's also important to pay attention to the different types of coping strategies that might require some coping flexibility. There's 3 that I'll cover today. One is a problem-focused coping. So there are times when we are doing things that are designed to directly address the issue that's causing us stress. It's very problem-solving oriented. How am I going to shift my relationship with this problem? How am I going to cope with the problem? Sometimes that is going to work for us, and sometimes it isn't. And sometimes the way we're addressing that problem solving is working for us, and sometimes we have to release the way we think is going to work and try something else. The second type of coping is more like emotion focused. So that would be like, how am I going to manage my emotions related to how I'm coping with this situation? And that also can be the right or wrong place to focus to get relief. And it can be handled in a way that's always worked for us, that continues to work for us, or maybe that has stopped working for us and we need to release it and try something else. And then the last one is what's called avoidant coping. So that would be like avoiding a stressor temporarily. If current events, if the news cycle is causing you a lot of stress, the coping strategy might be to put up those gatekeeping mechanisms that we talked about a minute ago to really avoid having that even coming into your consciousness. So you're not having to manage your emotions around it or problem solve around it. You're just putting up a wall so that that thing isn't coming into your awareness or into your space. So those are some ideas around this notion of having the strength to do what is yours to do. The last part of that quote, I'll repeat the quote. Show me what is mine to do, then grant me the strength to do it and the humility to rest knowing it is enough. The humility to rest knowing that it is enough. This is about balancing effort with acceptance and acknowledging our limits while finding real peace in the contributions that we can and do make. This is about self-compassion, grounded humility, and trusting the value of our work, even when imperfect or incomplete. Believing that your care and effort are enough, even when you can't address every need, which is certainly the reality of many educators these days. There's more to it, though. I think there's a dominant narrative in caregiving professions, including education, that how much you suffer is connected to how much you care. So the humility to rest, knowing that it is enough, requires us to reject the notion that how much we suffer is connected to how much we care. This is also an invitation to give our nervous systems the experience that your nervous system craves, which is to have a moment of strain and then the capacity to rest and not stay in that strained, activated survival state, but go into it temporarily and then drop back into a state of rest. Rhythm is what our nervous system needs and expects in order to feel regulated, safe, and calm. And in our present day lives, many of us have gotten accustomed to a baseline where we are feeling that survival state, fight, flight, or shut down energy all day long, every day. And that's incompatible with a regulated nervous system. Our nervous system needs the experience of getting activated when it needs to get activated and then dropping back into an experience of rest. And there's so much more to say about rest, but just beginning to understand that rest is a part of productivity, not the opposite of productivity, is a good argument for at least looking at ways to bring that into your life and create space for it. And of all the things we've talked about so far, I would just want to close with this notion that micro moments are valuable and they put us on a path which will give us benefits and relief, even though the path might be long. So we've talked about a lot of ideas, but if there's even just one that feels sticky to you from today's topic that you want to practice with, and you can only sustain your effort for 30 seconds a day even, that is valuable. And before you know it, that'll be a minute 3 times a day, or 10 minutes 3, 5, 6 times a day. It will grow, but don't minimize the value of starting with just those micro moments, just beginning to experience that clarity around what is yours to do, that connection to the strength to do it, and then that exhale that comes with dropping into the humility to rest, knowing that is enough. Our team's hope for you is that you play with these micro moments and look for ways to really connect to what is yours to do, what will give you the strength to do it, and what will give you space to experience that humility so that you can rest knowing that what you're doing is enough. Thank you for listening. We hope you will rate and review and subscribe, and also just stay in conversation with us. We really want this to be a podcast fueled by your experiences, your thoughts, your contributions. And a big thanks to our producer, Katie Warden, and Chris and I will be back in an upcoming episode with a new interview. And in the meantime, know that we see you and we value you. Thanks so much. That's it for today's episode of Oxygen for Educators. If you found value in this episode, consider sharing it with a colleague or friend. Please rate and subscribe so we can stay in conversation. And please let us hear from you if you have a suggestion for a topic or know of an educator we should interview. And thanks for all you do out there.